So could Putin unleash a wartime October surprise on the Biden administration just ahead of the midterm elections? For more on all this, let's bring in James Freeman, Fox News contributor and assistant editor at the Wall Street Journal. A lot of saber rattling, even nuclear war talk from Vladimir Putin. What do you make of that, James?
Yeah, it's a concern. The good news is obviously the Ukrainians are winning. He's looking for a way to turn the tide or conclude this war. He's looking for an exit strategy. Let's hope he doesn't do anything desperate and reckless. Obviously, his comments are very reckless. Let's not join him. Let's stay firm and resolute and keep helping the Ukrainians, but be careful not to get into a war with a nuclear armed power.
Yeah, the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines, it would seem to go against Putin's interests, but he's blamed the United States, which had warned that those pipelines were subject to sabotage. What do you think is the most likely scenario about who is behind it?
Certainly a lot of suspicions about Putin, watching what he's been doing in Ukraine all this year, and he's, of course, a former KGB officer from the Soviet era, so you wouldn't rule that out. But I think this is to their credit that leaders in Europe, despite suspicions, are saying, let's not accuse anyone until we're absolutely certain, and that is absolutely the right way to go. We don't want a miscalculation, a false estimate, a false diagnosis of what happened and who did it to lead into a confrontation.
Let's get to politics in this country now. You are an astute political watcher. We have the latest information from our Fox News polling about the issues that really concerns America the most. Right now, as it usually is in elections, the economy is the number one issue. 84% say that is their top concern. Education and schools, 77%. Inflation just behind that, which you could call the economy. 69% crime. Then abortion at 62%, immigration at 61%, and climate change at 50%. Where do you think this places the two parties when those are the top concerns, James?
Well, certainly an edge for Republicans in the sense that their issues, the issues where they tend to have an edge, are more important to voters. And as you pointed out, as the economy often is, as public safety often is as well. And you also have this very strong historical trend, and we've talked about it, that you have an unpopular president and you have the first midterm election of his term. You can go back to 1994 with Bill Clinton, 2010 Barack Obama, even Ronald Reagan, kind of the gold standard of modern presidents, had a rough year in 1982 with Democrats picking up a couple dozen seats in the House.
Speaking of the House, it looks like, all the polls would indicate that Republicans are poised to take the House. The Senate is a different matter, and let me put up. All right, let's take a look at the House rankings. You've got about 25 seats that lean or are likely Republican. You got about 42 seats that are leaning or likely Democrat, and then you've got 30 that are absolute toss-ups. Are you making any predictions or projections about control of the House, James?
Well, I do think unless there's some bizarre event, unexpected, and that can happen. You mentioned earlier one especially scary scenario in terms of Putin broadening the war. But in general, I think it's looking like a Republican House, not just the history, not just the president's polling level where he is in terms of popularity, but as you mentioned, the issues that are kind of driving the races this year. So I think that's the reasonable expectation, that you get a Republican House.
On the Senate side, Republicans were optimistic earlier in the year that they were going to be able to take the Senate, but when we look at the Senate races, well, there are roughly 11 that are either solid Democratic leaning or likely Democrat. Another 20 that are leaning or likely or solid Republican, and then you've got those 4 toss-up seats: Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and the Pennsylvania seat that's open. Those are really the 4 states that are going to determine the control of the U.S. Senate in the coming years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle have expected a Democratic Senate, and part of that is related to the specific candidates on the Republican side. Republican voters still like to pick outsiders. They don't like career politicians, so they've picked a number of people to be Senate candidates this year who are not highly experienced in politics. They come from all different fields. Doctor, venture capitalist, former football star, construction company owner. So these are often rookies. They make a lot of mistakes that polished pros don't make. But on the other hand, and obviously they have very little time to raise their game. But I think what you do see is some of them improving over time and maybe have more upside. If you want to think of them like athletic prospects, you know, they have a higher ceiling than the Democrats, who tend to be more or less finished products, tend to be more in the career politician mold. And you're seeing that in a place like Ohio, where J.D. Vance, a very accomplished guy in many ways, but he's new at this, and he makes mistakes on the trail. His opponent, Tim Ryan, very polished. He's a couple of decades in the House. He knows how to do politics. I think the issues, though, end up favoring Vance.
It is going to be a fascinating election to watch. And of course, we will have full coverage here at Fox, as you will at the Wall Street Journal. James Freeman, Fox News contributor and assistant editor at the Journal. James, thank you.
Thanks, John.